Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about socket wrenches, and we'd like to thank Linda Humphrey for liking and sharing the podcast. In the 1920s, Snap-on came up with 5 interchangeable handles that connected...
You haven't talked about ancient Egypt in a long time.
Yeah, they had no sockets. But in the 20s, Snap-on had 5 handles. So their motto was 5 do the work of 50. Mm-hmm. They had T-handles and these C-shaped handles. It was almost like the old hand drills.
Okay.
And you would connect interchangeable sockets to it. So that was kind of the first generation. And then in 1921, so I have this old hardware book, and there was an ad in there for this new ratchet socket wrench, and it looks almost identical to modern socket wrenches. And then I have this J.H. Williams socket set, and I got this when I first started investing in real estate. It's just like a narrow metal box, really heavy, beat up, rusty, and it came with 1/4-inch and 3/8 ratchet handles, and it has the SAE and metric sockets. And I've used this my whole career, decades, and that one set will probably last the rest of my life. So it's a nice tool that you'll have for a long time if you get a quality set. Mm-hmm. J.H. Williams was acquired by Snap-on in 1993.
Good to know.
So a ratcheting socket has interchangeable socket heads, and they fit over a nut or bolt, and it allows you to tighten and loosen them very easy. One side of the socket has a square opening, so this is going to snap onto your wrench. So like this handle that you have, it's going to snap on perpendicular to the handle so that you can tighten and loosen nuts and bolts. And then the other side of the socket is usually 6-sided or 12-sided. And so they'll call that a 6-point or a 12-point.
Okay.
And the wrench is going to have a small spring-loaded ball bearing. And so this locks that socket onto the handle so it just doesn't fall loose. Many of the sockets are going to have a push button release, so you push just above where the back of the socket is, and it's going to allow that ball bearing to recess, and so the socket snaps off. But there's a lot of handles that don't have that, so you're just going to have to grab the socket and pull it free. The ratcheting gear allows you to get into smaller areas to tighten and loosen faster than you could with an adjustable wrench or an open-end wrench or a box wrench even. And the reversible gear allows you to turn the wrench in one direction, and then it locks onto that nut or bolt as you turn it the opposite direction. So it's ratcheting one direction, and then it locks. And now you're either able to tighten or loosen depending on the direction you have it. And you'll either have a lever or a dial to reverse the direction of the ratchet. And I found that the lever is much easier to use. Sometimes those dials are very flat. They're hard to really grab hold of. If you have an older ratcheting wrench, sometimes what you have to do is grab the socket with your hand and turn the lever and kind of wiggle it a little bit so that the gears just change directions. And the ratcheting gear is going to come with a varying number of teeth.
So what does that mean?
Gears with a higher number of teeth are going to allow smaller movement, so it catches that next tooth and then it locks in place so you can either tighten or loosen.
So is that clicking sound that you hear?
Right, exactly. So it's clicking over each tooth before it can lock down so you can move it. If you have a 3/8 socket wrench, it can come with 36 to 72 teeth on that gear.
That's a big difference.
Well, 36 teeth are going to give you about a 10-degree movement. So you've got to move the handle 10 degrees before it locks onto the next tooth. If you have a gear with 72 teeth, you only have to move the handle 5 degrees. So if you're in a real tight area where you can just barely move, and you couldn't even use a standard wrench there, this is going to allow you to work something loose. And the ASME, so this is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, they set the standard for tool strength. Socket wrench gears have to have a torque strength of at least 1,800 inch-pounds.
Is that supposed to mean something?
That means it's very strong.
What's the difference between 6-sided and 12-sided?
So mechanics, they really like the 6-sided sockets. So
Why?
I was on a lot of these forums. Was that even in English?
No, it's like you're speaking in tongues.
So the mechanics are saying the 6-sided sockets are for heavy...
Is that hard to say?
over and over, for heavy use and torque because they have thicker walls and they have much more surface area on the bolt. and it only fits hex nuts or bolts, and it fits it very well. A 12-point socket, sometimes called a double hex, a bihex, or a bihexagon. This is two hexagons laid over one another, and this is not only going to fit over hex bolts and nuts, but it also fits over square fasteners.
No way.
So this is much better for homeowners, I think,
Right.
because it's more versatile. And it also fits in twice as many positions, so it's easier to slip on to a nut or bolt in a tight position because you have more points where it can slide over something.
Oh.
So you only have to rotate the socket a max of 30 degrees compared to 60 degrees if you have a 6-point socket. When you're looking at socket wrenches, you can get 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1. And the most common ratchet socket wrenches are going to be 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2. And this is the size of that square opening on the back of the socket, and that's what fits onto the handle. And then also on the socket handle itself, it's going to have a square nub that your
Right.
socket is sliding onto. 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch are good for most projects around the house, and your handle has to match your sockets. So you can get adapters to connect one size to another. And what's nice about a 3/8 ratchet set is you can get adapters to either go to 1/4 inch sockets or 1/2 inch sockets. So it's very versatile. And a tip when you're using adapters, some are small and hard to hold on to when you're removing the socket from them. So I would connect my adapter onto my handle first, put my socket on, and then when I'm removing it, hold onto the handle and remove the socket first. You're going to leave that adapter on the wrench, and then if you have a push button release, remove it then. Because sometimes I've had an adapter on a socket and I yank the whole thing off, and then it is sometimes so small and slippery you can't get the adapter off the socket. So remove the socket first. You have standard depth sockets and deep sockets. Deep sockets will get to nuts that have a long bolt through them. And then the deep socket's also going to help reach down into tight areas to give you a little more length. And if you're working on a project, let's say you have a toilet tank that you're removing from the bowl, a lot of times that bolt going through the tank is very long.
Right.
So a deep socket's going to grab that nut and allow you to take it off very easily.
Well, that space is really small.
Yeah, it's crazy. A regular wrench, the porcelain curves around a lot of times, and you can't move a standard wrench in there.
I don't think there's like a lot of projects where you're going to need a socket, but when you do need a socket,
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
there's-
And it makes it so easy.
Right.
You can also get pass-through sockets and wrenches. So if you have a long bolt or a threaded rod, these pass-through sockets have a special handle with a hole in the area that connects to the socket. So the sockets are hollow. Where it attaches to the handle is hollow there, and so a threaded rod will go right through it and then attach it. And in many applications, this is going to do the job of a deep socket.
Are nut drivers considered sockets?
I would consider them a manual socket wrench, yes.
How about the rest of the world?
I don't know. But they're going to fit over a nut, a hex nut or a hex bolt.
Right.
They're much more difficult. You don't get as much leverage as like a ratcheting socket.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Socket sets come in SAE or metric sizes. SAE is short for the Society of Automotive Engineers, and these are all sockets that are based in fractions of an inch, and it's only used in 3 countries. So the U.S., Liberia, and Myanmar. Metric is the standard throughout the rest of the world based on millimeters, and this was really popularized in 1825 by the British Empire, and they called it the British Imperial Units. And because it was started by the French, a lot of the U.S. leaders in the 1800s thought it was atheistic.
Why?
So they thought they were trying to get rid of biblical measurements like the cubit, and a lot of the early leaders didn't like the French. So there was a lot of political songs and writings they were performing in the 1800s, and part of one of these anti-metric songs were "Down with every metric scheme, a perfect inch, a perfect pinch." So if
I
you're
wish you would have sung that.
So if you're in the U.S., you should be looking for a socket set with SAE and metric sizes. You can get all types of specialty sockets for socket wrenches.
So when you're buying a socket set, does it just come in the SAE or metric, or you get them both together?
Yeah, you can do either. So you can either get standard, you can get metric, or you can get a set that has both, which I think is the most versatile, especially here if you're here in the U.S.
Right.
If you're
if you live anywhere else,
Liberia
probably metric.
Yeah, it's all you're going to need. But in the U.S., I would get something that has both types of sockets.
So here it's called SAE is called standard.
Right.
Okay.
So with these specialty sockets, you can get swivel head or wobble head adapters, and this allows the socket to rotate so you can get into tight areas, or if you have a tough angle to get your socket into, you can get drill and driver adapters to connect your socket to a drill, and then you can get sockets that have screwdriver bits on the end of it. So you've got a standard socket, but then sticking out of that, you either have a Phillips head, slotted, Torx, or Allen.
Really?
So Allen is a hex, and this is going to be inserted into something. You can also get socket ball hexes. So this has the hex shape, so like an Allen wrench, but the end is rounded, so you can get into a fastener up to a 30-degree angle.
Wow.
And when you're using the socket ball hexes, you want to make sure that you're going slow and keeping good pressure so it doesn't pop out if you're going at a steep angle. And then there's this company I saw called Bondus. It's Bondhus. And they've got a line of hex tools that are rated as some of the strongest you can buy because they use a special type of steel called protanium.
Wow. Fancy.
Extension bars are going to give your wrench more reach, and so this is like an adapter you put onto your wrench, and then you put your socket on the end of this, and it comes in a variety of lengths. Breaker bars are non-ratcheting handles that are very long, and so it's going to give you a lot more torque.
Right.
So if you have a fastener that's frozen in place or rusted in place, and it doesn't move with a standard size wrench, then this breaker bar is just going to give you the torque you need. And I would always soak a nut or a bolt that's frozen in place with something like a PB Blaster penetrant or a liquid wrench first.
Right.
Let it set, and then use a wrench on it.
So penetrating oil.
Right. If you plan on using an impact drill with your sockets, you want to get impact rated sockets, and these are sockets made with a blend of material that will stand up to the high torque and the vibration without shattering. And they cover this with a black oxide coating. It protects it against corrosion, and the standard zinc coating won't stand up to all this impact.
So it's actually going to be black?
Yes, yeah. So it makes it easy to pick them out when you're using them on your projects.
What are some top-rated companies?
So you have Craftsman, Stanley, Gear Wrench, SK, Crescent, and Channel Lock. And Channel Lock has a new line. They have 72 teeth gears, so you only need that 5-degree swing. They have longer handles, so you're going to generate more torque. They come with a lifetime warranty, and they're color coding the sockets, so it's either going to have a red stripe or a blue stripe, whether it's SAE or metric.
Oh, that's nice.
And then Crescent has a real interesting new wrench. So it's called the X6 Pass-Through Adjustable Wrench. It's an 8-inch adjustable wrench on one side, and then you're using this on the other side. It has a pass-through socket, so you have two tools in one. And then what's wild about this special X6 socket is it's designed to fit onto hex, square, 12-point, E-Torx, spline, or rounded hex bolts or nuts.
Wow.
So very versatile.
I don't even know what half those things are.
Right. Yeah, it seems interesting, so I'm excited to check it out at the next hardware show.
Do you have anything else to add?
I would say for most projects around the house, if you're using a socket on a toilet, bicycles, motorcycles, some small automotive repair, your air conditioning, if you're just hard to reach places, either a 1/4 inch or 3/8 is going to do a great job. If you get 3/8 ratcheting socket set, it's probably the most versatile because you can get adapters for either 1/4 inch sockets or 1/2 inch sockets. And I would also get an additional adapter so you can use your sockets with either your drill or your impact driver. And then like the cases, I really like these new plastic cases to keep everything organized, much easier to carry. They're not going to get rusted up like the one I have. And I would get a set, if you're in the U.S., get a set with SAE and metric sockets. And if you plan on using an impact driver, I would get impact rated sockets.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify mobile app, the Google Play Music app, or iHeartRadio.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can check out our book, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
And you can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.